All right. So anyhow, we'll do this like in TV. You know, when you come in, they give you like a little bit of the last episode to bring you back up to the what's happening on the TV. So in brief, we talked last time about dreams, and we divided them into dreams as in the way like Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, I have a vision, a purpose in life, and so on. And then we also talked about nighttime or daydreams and then nighttime dreams. And the nighttime dreams we divided into depending what part of the night the dream comes down. If it's the first part, which was the part that related to the donkey, if it was the middle part that related to the dog, or if it was the morning, which related to the whispering. And the result of those filters would determine what type of dream was coming down or a person was receiving. We also talked that dreams, at least in the Jewish approach, in the Yotiren approach to dreams, is that it has no reality unless it's interpreted. So therefore, it's completely different than this world reality. Like a car drives into a tree, that's reality. Now, why did the driver drive into the tree? That's everybody's interpretation, but it doesn't affect the reality. The reality is that the car drove into the tree. In the dream, what a person sees in the dream has no reality until it's interpreted. Now, one reason that is because since the consciousness of the dream, which can be everything from complete nonsense to on the higher worlds of prophecy, but they are not in this world. So they enter through the portal of the mind, but the mouth, which opens into this world, is how the rope is pulled out into this world. So the interpretation is what's giving the dream a rope to be grounded into this world. Like, for example, I'll tell you a perfect example. In Beijing, you have this really cool Winter Palace. And when I went to the Winter Palace, one of the most beautiful things I saw were these unbelievable kites flying in the air. You know, and like really serious people. I wasn't like a little kid with a little kite. It was like real, but they had to hold the rope, because if you don't hold the rope, the kite's gone. So it's the same idea. The kite is like the dream, but the rope is the interpretation. And in fact, what the person does with the rope actually will determine what the kite is going to do in the sky. So the substance of a dream only happens through its interpretation. That's why the Talmud says there were these two rabbis who had the exact same dream, but they received different interpretations and different results occurred because it has that same idea. There's another level of a dream which we didn't talk about last time, even though I'm going to come back to these points in a few more minutes, and that is, what is really a dream, right? Like, let's say you could, there was a Steven Spielberg movie made not too many years ago based on a very famous children's story called Big. I think it was called Big. It was about this giant who came into the city, and the little girl became his friend, and then he took her back to his house, and he had these jars where he captured people's dreams. Very beautiful movie. Well, think about that. Let's say you could take one of those jars and it had a dream in there, and you could somehow take this jar into a laboratory. And so now you are trying to scientifically analyze the substance of what is a dream. Like, what is it? Like, is it got oxygen? Does it have hydrogen? Does it have a certain impulse of electrical? What if you could capture a dream and analyze it, what would be the fabric of a dream? So the answer, we would say, is that a dream is merely a term for a state of consciousness. So that's why you can have a daydream. You can be talking to somebody and realize they're not listening to anything you're saying, and their eyes are kind of like glazed, and they're just somewhere else, right? That's a daydream. You can be with your friend who's sleeping at night and suddenly hear him or her start to say things, but not to you because they're inside a dream. So a dream is really a state of consciousness. This is why it is hinted at, and I'm going to open this up more, but I'll start step by step. When King David wrote that when the Messiah will come, which we pronounce as Mashiach, when Mashiach will come, we will be like dreamers. Azimot kecholim, we will be like dreamers. Now, question is, what did he mean by that? What does that mean to be like dreamers? Okay, so the children, when you're teaching a 5-year-old that, the 5-year-old would think, woo, yeah, like, oh, it's my dream came true, I got the blue bike I always wanted. It's my dream came true. So, okay, very nice. The Mashiach came, all the dead people came back to life, maybe a little dusty, but they made it back, and so it's like a dream come true. That's fine. That's fine. It's okay to be a child. So that's what a child, how they would understand to be like a dream. Another level, though, going deeper, is it tells us something which the people who, I don't see the video, I don't know how old they are, but looking at the young women that I do see, I know that all of you are too young to know this. Maybe your parents knew this, but when I was your age, a young man, we had a thing called Super 8 movies. They came on like a little reel, and you had a machine, you put it up here, and then it was another one here, and it would go through this machine, and the light would shine, and you would watch a movie, like kind of like that, but with no sound. It was called Super 8. Check it out. Now, what would happen would be, just as the reel was about to finish, the last few seconds would go, because a lot of it had to do with a pull. But since there was such almost nothing left, it went really fast. So you're watching this, and then all of a sudden, and it was over. So that also is like a dream, right? When was the last time you went to the bathroom in your dream? When was the last time you actually went from one place to another by walking every single step? Doesn't happen. When you're in a dream, you're just there, and you're just there, and you just, right? There is no, time moves at a different reality than what you're used to. There's a kind of a dream energy or movement. So on the next level above from the child, that idea, what King David meant, is that the speed of events that will happen in the world will no longer be the way that they have moved at their speed in the past. Things will start to move at almost incredible speeds. People won't even feel that they can even hold on to time anymore. Time will be going so fast. I don't know if you ever saw the Stanley Kubrick movie. If you don't, I highly recommend seeing it at least 70 times. It's called 2001: Space Odyssey. One of the most brilliant movies. It's a little bit old, I know, but it's one of the most brilliant. I mean, Stanley Kubrick was maybe one of the most brilliant minds of movie making history ever. And this was one of his classic movies called 2001: Space Odyssey. It might be a little slow because it was made many years ago, but it's brilliant. But it's a guy who eventually comes out of time. And then time starts to move so fast, it doesn't have shape anymore. So that's another thing that King David was telling us, that this period of time, things will start to move at a very, very fast pace. But then there's a third level of what does it mean to be like dreamers. And that is, I'm sure you've had this a million times happen to you, happens to me. You are deep, deep in a dream. Deep. I mean, you are 100% there, wherever there is, you are there. And then all of a sudden, something happens, and you wake up. I mean, how many times have you woken up in the middle of a good dream and you try to like get back in, swim back, wait, I'm coming back, and it's gone, right? You can't get back into the dream. I mean, if you could, that'd be great. I remember when I was a little kid and we first got our TVs. So I used to think we'd be sitting around with the family, be watching the movie, and I would get up, I'm maybe 7 years old, and I would go over and I'd turn off the TV while everyone was watching. And they would scream, "Why are you turning off the TV?" I said, "Well, I have to go to the bathroom. I don't want to miss anything. I'll turn it back on when I come back," right? As if somehow you could like get back to it. I mean, today, of course, we can because it's all digital, but it wasn't in that way a world. So the question is, though, what does that mean when you wake up from that dream? So while you were in the dream, you were convinced 100,000% that was real. And the minute you wake up, you realize it wasn't real at all. So that's another idea what King David was telling us. This world is a dream. We think of going to sleep and having dreams, that those are the dreams. Actually, they're not. That going to sleep is a time to get away from the noise of this world. It's like two nice Jewish boys who started playing music named Simon and Garfunkel, both of whom went to yeshiva when they were younger. So they had a song called The Sounds of Silence. So there is so much noise in the world, you can't hear anything. Everybody's so busy talking and there's 24 hours on the news and this is you can't even think anymore. So suddenly, that's why God gave the Torah in the desert. So there should be no noise from all the what's happening, and be in a place of such quiet you can actually hear. So the only way that somehow God can communicate with us on a certain level is in our dreams, because that's the only time we're really real. It's the only time. Think of it the other way. Instead of thinking of what you would call waking up from your dream, coming back here, maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe the dream is waking up, and this is the dream. And so only at that moment when you're dreaming are you actually hearing from a world which is the real reality, trying to pipe down to you a sense of awareness, of wisdom, of consciousness that will enable you to survive in this dream. And so maybe what King David is saying to us is that this whole world is a dream. And when the real reality, the manifestation of God in everything and everywhere, which is the third temple for all people, not just Jews, but for everybody, and the Mashiach and the resurrection of the dead, so that will be real reality. And then suddenly we'll look back upon this as a dream. So I'm going to share with you, based on this, a very deep teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. I hope it will change your lives for the best forever. Sorry, just have to close the window here. Too much Hebrew coming in through the window. Okay. So the Baal Shem Tov talks about a story in the Bible. The story is King David is on his throne, and the prophet, the Navi, Nathan, comes in, and he says, something horrible has just happened. King David says, what is it? And he says, there's a very rich man who wanted to have a party, and his soldiers went to a very poor woman across the street and stole her only lamb to make for the party. The man has thousands of animals, and they went and stole this woman's only lamb. And King David is angry, and he stands up with his sword, and he says, who is this man? And the prophet says to him, it's you. He says, me? He says, yes, you have 18 wives, or all of these wives, and you had to go and take the only wife of Uriah Hittite, his wife Bathsheba. That's the story of the prophet. At that moment, there's a whole nother teaching which we're not going to do today. But the Baal Shem Tov says, why didn't the prophet just come in without playing poker? Why is he playing cards? Throw down a ace or pick up a jack. Why is he playing, or mahjong? Throw down that one, throw down that one. Why is he playing a game? Just come in and say, King David, how could you have Uriah Hittite killed and take his wife Bathsheba? What is this? Because had he come in like that, King David would have had a wall of defense. He would have had all the reasons, all the excuses, all the justification. That's how we are. If somebody's coming to criticize us, our little early warning system goes off, beep, 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 and you're ready. Whatever, you're ready. And then you know what you'll even do? Not only will you defend yourself, but you'll even prove to the person who's talking to you how horrible they are. Right? So the chances of hearing are zero. You're going to go from defense to offense and attack that person. So what the Navi did is he created a distraction where King David didn't even think it had anything to do with him. So King David could look at it objectively. And once King David got it, then the prophet could show King David how it was really him. So the Baal Shem Tov says this happens to all of us. Actually, it's this week's Parsha. Always funny how that happens. It's amazing. The Zohar says, whatever. Anyhow, the Zohar says in this week's Parsha is the famous line, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph. All of the brothers, you know the whole story. I probably know it better than I do. But anyhow, so all of a sudden they're about to battle Joseph because of Benjamin. And Joseph says, hey, I am Joseph. And they can't speak. They are freaked out. The Zohar says this happens to all of us when we die. When we die and we come upstairs, you hear a voice, I am God. And the soul is paralyzed, shock, and can't speak. Now, at that moment, I'm sure you've heard this before, it's actually been found in people all around the world by great scientists like Dr. Moody and others, called after near-death experiences. People see their whole life flash before their eyes. What does that mean? So what it means is that it's not God or the angels who judge a person. It's us. We judge ourselves at that moment. And how does that happen? So instead of them actually showing you your life, they show you a totally not related story. They show you a guy goes into a store with a pistol and he's stealing money out of the cash register. That's what they show you. And you're like, for the first time in your life, you see God and you see gazillions of angels, and it's unbelievable. And you can't understand how anywhere in creation could there be a place where such a thing could be happening. And you yell out, God, how can you allow this? And so God will say to you, what should I do? Be careful. There's probably one or two things you could say. One could be, I don't know, cause the roof to fall down and kill this guy with a gun. Could be. The other thing you could say is, I don't know, maybe we should have a closer look at the guy with the gun. Maybe he's starving to death and circumstances beyond his control forces him to do something like this. And therefore, we should have mercy on him. Well, whatever you say, at that moment, suddenly the movie or the TV goes, and it's you. You're the guy with a gun. Except it's not you with a gun. It's you in another situation that you would have never even put the two of them together. But now you immediately understand how the story of the gun was you on that day on August 3rd, whatever. And you pronounced with your own mouth judgment, however you judged it. So the Baal Shem Tov teaches us an exercise for the soul, right? The brain is only a muscle. And if you exercise your brain, just like if you exercise your other muscles, it's stronger. If you don't exercise it, it gets lazy, it gets weak. So there are also exercises, not just for the brain, for the mind, but even higher for the soul. You can train your soul. You can exercise your soul. So here's the exercise. Every time you see a questionable situation of what somebody else on the surface seems to be doing doesn't look right, give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, if you clearly know what's wrong, then you have to bring justice. But if you don't know for sure what it is, and the Talmud is filled with such amazing stories, if you know that the person's really basically a good person, but now you see them yelling and screaming, you can give the person the benefit of the doubt that they're just having a really bad day. They're not a bad person. They're just having a bad day. And what happens is you now train your soul to always think with the eyes of mercy. And therefore, at that moment, when you're looking at your own life, you will look with compassion at your own life. But that is the moment of waking up from the dream of this world. This world, which we think is the world of real reality, is really theater, maybe sometimes theater of the absurd, but it is theater. Every single one of us, I'm not going to go into the reincarnation, we'll save that for another time, but every single one of us is in the most perfectly designed theatrical play possible, and you are the hero. And who your parents are, and what country you are born in, and what worlds you think and people that you meet, these are all perfect design actors who are all there for you to discover why you are here. The problem is, because we take this as so for real, and it is for real on one level, there's the joke about the Hindu guru who gave a lecture that all of this world is an illusion. But still, when he walked outside, he stepped out of the way when the truck came, right? So we don't say that this world is an illusion. We live it as a real world, and we have to deal with that. People who are hungry have to be fed. People who have no clothes have to be given clothing. We have to live like this. But we have to know on some level, it's all about really seeing what we are here to do. Otherwise, we get so engaged with fighting our enemies and criticizing other people and all these other things. Imagine if you knew, coming back, Shaw, to AI, just imagine, actually there was a movie like this with Jim Carrey. I think it was called The Truman Story. Right. What was it called?
Truman Show.
Yeah, The Truman Show, exactly. Imagine that was your life. So he didn't know that those were all actors and it was all being staged until, of course, at the end. But imagine that's really what's happening. God has put you in the perfect situation for what your soul needs to be able to do, to go through this exercise so that when you wake up from this dream back into the real reality, you will be a very highly elevated person. And this has to do with dreams themselves. Jacob's dream of the ladder. What was the lesson of Jacob's dream? Jacob goes to sleep. He sees a ladder going up and he sees angels coming up and down on this ladder. What is this all about? So the answer is that he was discovering exactly what I've just taught you. He was discovering that the ladder has its feet on the ground, but the high point in heaven. In other words, if you meet somebody whose head is only in heaven, they're hard to relate to. If you meet somebody whose feet are only on the ground, they're kind of boring. The challenge is to be with your feet on the ground while your head is in heaven like a ladder. Now, the thing about a ladder, the Vilna Gaon says that when you climb a ladder, if you skip You don't take each rung, it's called in English, as you go up the ladder. If you miss and you fall, you don't fall to where you left off. You fall all the way back down to the ground. So that means that when a person is growing spiritually, even though he or she may be very anxious to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, it's very important to be humble and go step by step by step by step by step. I'll give you an example. My rabbi once told me, he says, imagine, actually you really do have to imagine, because with Corona, I mean, I haven't been on an airplane almost a year. So we call it BC, before Corona. So in the period of time called BC, when I used to get on airplanes, so imagine you're like, you just come in, they're asking to see your ticket, so you could go, ha ha, because they're putting you over in first class or business, or, oh, okay. And you go off, with all the cattle in the back. Anyhow, so that moment, you see the engineer talking to the pilot. And the pilot says to the engineer, because the engineer was looking over everything, and the pilot says to the engineer, how's the engine? And the engineer says, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just glanced over it. Would you get on that plane? If you would, you really need some psychological help. To get on a plane where the engineer, whose job is to check every little wire, every little screw, every little this, every little that. And it's basically, it's fine. It should be no problem. Good luck. Have a good flight from Beijing to Buenos Aires. You'll be in the air for a while. You should make it. Yeah, you should make it. You wouldn't get on that plane, hopefully. You would want the guy to say, yeah, well, here I went over every, look, there was a little thing here, but I fixed it and everything. Yeah, 100%. That's what you want. I mean, that's what you want. So when you are building a spaceship, so when you get out of this thing and now you're really going off into the infinite based on what you built, the gift that God gave you to live forever, you want to make sure that you did it slowly and carefully. There's no rush. One person's spiritual growth is not in a race with another person's spiritual growth. You are born alone, you die alone, you live alone. You may live next to somebody, but you're never really with somebody. So therefore, focus and grow step by step. The other lesson that Jacob learned from the ladder was the only way to grow in the spiritual world of the infinite. And, as Jews, we believe in 18,000 other planets with intelligent life on them. People always say, oh, do you believe in life on other planets? I always say back, I don't know if I believe in life on this planet. I haven't found too much intelligent life on our planet. Forget other planets. They're jerks running around with nuclear bombs and guns and liars and thieves. I mean, what kind of, this is like a planet of snakes? We're the humans. So whatever. But we believe there are at least 18,000 other planets with intelligent life. How are you going to get there? How are you going to be part of that? You can be. You can do it. And I'll tell you something in science. The only way to change course is through, in physics, friction. If something is moving on a course and something else hits it, it can change course. But if you are in outer space, there is no friction. So the projectile that you create will eternally remain like that. So the whole idea of the ladder of Jacob was God showing, I am bringing angels, meaning your souls, down into this world. And, if you see like in the movies, when the astronauts walk on the moon, they have these astronaut suits. So they think of this as your astronaut suit. It allows you to walk on this planet. You have the right breathing, you have the right tools, you have everything you need to be able to live on this planet. But that's all it is. You wouldn't wear that astronaut suit when you were back on Earth, unless maybe it's Halloween, you wouldn't do it. So imagine now you come down into this world and you get the right suit to wear, But that's because in this world, you have the ability to alter your spiritual course. You can now do, by wisdom and kindness and acts of goodness, you can become a flame of holiness. You have free will. Very few people do that. So, okay. But the ones that did, happy camper. And you have that chance to change that course of your spiritual direction. So when you go back up the ladder, you now go into a whole greater space than you were before. That dream is now taught over to Jacob's son, Joseph. Joseph has two dreams. Now, keep that in mind, because in a few more minutes, we're going to see that Pharaoh had two dreams, and we're going to compare those dreams. So Joseph has two dreams. The first dream is that all the brothers were in the field harvesting and making what we call ulamim in Hebrew, sheaves, bundles of, let's say, wheat. And suddenly Joseph is in the middle and the bundles bow to Joseph. Then there's the second dream. And in the second dream, now there are stars and the sun and the moon, and they come and they bow to Joseph. Okay, hold that. Let's go to Paro's dream for a minute. Paro has two dreams. His first dream is dealing with cows coming out of the Nile River. And the next one is dealing with, let's call them barley husks that have, like, you know, different grain on top of them, good and bad and good and bad. Now, when Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and Pharaoh says, why did I have two dreams? Joseph's answer was that the second dream is really the same as the first dream. In other words, the one about the cows and the one about the food is the same dream. And the reason that you got it twice was to tell you it's happening now. It's here. It's like, it's here. Yet, when it comes to Joseph's two dreams, nobody says that the second dream is the same as the first dream, even though in both dreams, there's also bowing, and nobody says it to say it's happening right now. So what was the difference of Pharaoh's dream, where that was the correct interpretation, and not Joseph's dreams? The answer is like as follows. I'll say this actually differently, although maybe I should say it first so I could say it differently, because I didn't really say it first, so this isn't really differently, but forget it. Anyhow, there are two ways to go through life. One is to count your days go by. You just become older. Or two, you make your days count. So instead of becoming older, instead of becoming age, you become sage. You become wise, right? Remember in the great Chinese history of the respect of the elders because they were wiser, because they've lived and seen more? Same thing in the Jews, respecting the elders. In fact, the word for elder in Hebrew, one of the words is called zaken, but it's really an acronym for Zeh Kona Hachma. This person has acquired wisdom. So if you make your days count, every day becomes like a pearl, and you're threading it on the necklace of your life. So therefore, Paro was not growing. He was just, living to the next meal. So his first dream started on an animal level, because he couldn't get higher than that, because as far as he was concerned, it's only this world. There is no next world or things of that nature. And the second dream was even lower. It went from animal level down to vegetable level. But Yosef was about growing. So Yosef's first one was also about food, but the second one was about heaven. It was going up. It was elevating. Therefore, it had separate lessons. The first dream of Yosef, this, by the way, is all teachings from Chabad I'm sharing with you now. The first lesson of growing was that when something grows out of the ground, each one grows in its unique place. just like hairs in your head. Each hair comes out of a different hole in the head. So when food grows out of the ground, it all comes out individually. It gives the impression of fragmentation, of a lack of cohesive unity, of oneness. And the job of the holy person is to bundle them. So they were taking these standalone things and making bundles, showing the unity in everything. And the unity in everything found, symbolized by bowing, the ultimate unity, which is the holy person who represents God in this world, in this case, Joseph. However, there's another level, and that was the second dream of the stars and the moon and the sun. There it teaches us a different thing. What if you already are a holy person, not just a person of the ground who simply lives in the world of agriculture and food all day long, like Paro? What if you're a star in heaven? So a person may feel, wow, look at me. I really got my act together. I'm a holy person. Nonsense. As long as you are alive, you can become more. You can always grow. So therefore, a person should never fall asleep and thinking that they're so holy that they've got it made, because even the stars and the moon and the sun needed to bow before the truly holy man, which in this case was Joseph, in order to be able to elevate it to a higher level. Now, the other thing now, going into Paro's dream, is where Joseph's dreams and Jacob's dreams were all about relationships to God. Paro's dream, because it was all coming from his central ego, was all about him. How does the dream begin? Paro is standing on the river Nile. Well, that's kind of interesting. I know another religion that made somebody into a superhero because he also stood on water. So way before that man was born, you've got Paro standing on water in the dream, because he declared himself God. Parallels. And he said, I am the God of Egypt, right? That's what he was. He was all about the God of Egypt. Now, if you know anything about gods, they don't go to the bathroom, because that's kind of totally anti-God, like totally not cool. When you go to the bathroom, you can't really be God. So that's why if you ever ask yourself in the Bible story, why the heck does it say that God told Moses to go meet Paro at 4 o'clock in the morning down by the river? It's because Paro, who held it in all day long, right? Especially men, we know very much what it's like to wake up in the morning, the urgency to get to the bathroom. So he's at 4 o'clock in the morning. Paro is ripping down to get to the river. And Moses pops out and says, oh, great God of Egypt, who never goes to the bathroom. And meanwhile, Paro's like dancing from leg to leg to leg to leg. And Paro says to Moses, what do you want? He says, let my people go. So Paro says, fine, let me go and I'll let your people go, right? So because and so Paro's in the bushes and you hear, coming out across all of Egypt while the whole country sleeps, because he couldn't let anybody know that he's a God who goes to the bathroom. Okay, so he's in his own ego. He stands on the river because he's God. And up out of the river come the 7 beautiful cows. And up out of the river come the 7 sickly cows that then eat the good cows. If you look carefully, when Paro tells over the dreams to Joseph, he changes it. He says the good cows come up out of the river. Remember, the river Nile was their God, or Paro was God, but the Nile was another level of God. So when he tells the story of the dream, he says that the good ones came up out of the river, but he doesn't say that the bad ones. He says then it came up, the bad ones, but he does not say out of the river. He deletes those words, because he cannot admit that his idol has a weakness, because everybody's idol has got to be perfect. So therefore, he needed to make his idol, no bad could come out of that. Okay, here's the real question. Egypt there were no magicians or black magic magicians or sorcerers or witchcraft. It was, there's an expression, bringing like a snowball to the Eskimos. To bring a magic trick to Egypt was like a joke. Nobody knew magic and black magic and all these things like the Egyptians. And they were brilliant scientists. Pyramids and many things which today we don't even believe they have, but we have a tradition that they had flying vessels that traveled the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So Paro was lacking advisors. Paro was lacking advisors as to where and when they were going to be able to interpret his dream. Excuse me just for 1 second, I'm sorry. So why was it that Joseph's interpretation was more acceptable? Our sages say that one person came along and said he was going to have 7 daughters and they were all going to die. That was the good and the bad. Another one says he was going to fight 7 countries and conquer them, and then he was going to lose to them. So who said that just because Joseph now came along and said they were going to have 7 good years and then 7 bad years with prosperity and famine, how did he know that this was correct? What was the trick? So the answer is, none of the people interpreting the dreams could deal with this key problem in the dream. In the dream, you had the 7 good cows and the 7 bad ones. But that, even though the bad ones ate the good ones, it still means that they were both existing at the same time. In other words, if he had 7 daughters and then they died, they wouldn't be there when the bad was happening. If they had won 7 victories but then lost, they wouldn't be, right? So the idea that they were simultaneous, no one could translate that except Joseph. Joseph said the reason, first you have the good, that's now. And if you prepare for the bad, then even when the bad is there, you will still have the good because you prepared. That's how Joseph was able to show the simultaneous component of the dreams. And so therefore, that's why Paro realized this was a person who was able to really interpret it in a way that made sense to him, that actually worked for him. That was his whole capability. Wait, I just want to see, I had one more thing here. I know it's almost, time is up. I just want to find, forgive me for one quick second here. Yeah, okay. So the last thing I want to just talk about in terms of these dreams is there's another very famous dream. I mean, there are lots, but we're going to do one more very famous dream. If you want to have a look at it, I even looked it up in English because I wasn't sure if you guys have quite mastered the holy language, but I'm sure by next month you will have. So I'll give you the source. It's in the book of Kings 1, and it's chapter 3. And let's see here. Let's see where you should start from. Okay, chapter 3, verse 5. And then you could probably go till about yeah, until the end of the 3rd chapter. Excuse me. I'll just highlight it though. King Solomon, by the way, I have to just tell you, I give my class to the Igbo, God bless them, just before this class. And I was telling them about King Solomon, which I'll share with you now, but from a different perspective. And I mentioned that King Solomon became the king of Israel at the age of 12. And as soon as I said that, like 2 or 3 boys who I hadn't seen before, they all kind of like suddenly, they all sort of like stood up and like they were there. Like I could suddenly see they had like this great pride of, yeah, I'll also be king of Israel by the time I'm 12. They're maybe 9 years old. It was very sweet. Anyhow, King David is about to, King Solomon is about to take over the throne at 12 years old. And God appears to him in a dream. And in the middle of the dream, he asks, I'm making this a short version. It's worth reading in length, this beautiful story. He says to him, God says to him, what can I give you? And King Solomon says, I would like wisdom to know how to judge the people in a fair way. And so God says, because you asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you wealth. I'm going to give you health. I'm going to give you power, all of these things. So the question I think the Talmud asks is, might be the Maharal. The question is, without comparison, of course, I'm just saying this as a metaphor, but if you have a little genie in a bottle and you rub it, the genie, yes, master, what can I give you? You have one wish. So if you were smart, you would ask for wisdom. Because with wisdom, you could figure out how to stay healthy, how to make money, how to become powerful. If you just ask for money, you might be an idiot with a lot of money. We know a lot of people like that, actually. So it doesn't really mean anything. But if you have wisdom, you can have everything. So what was the big deal? That was the perfect answer. Very clever answer. So the answer is, that's why God appeared to King Solomon in the middle of a dream, in the middle of the night. Because King Solomon didn't have a chance to think about the answer. His love for wisdom was authentic. It came from really inside because he was in a dream state. All the nonsense of clever was silenced. It was just his pure soul that was speaking. And that's why he got real wisdom. And that's why everything else came together in a very wonderful way. And that's why the next story is a very famous story. I'm sure you've heard it, but this is the source of it. There are two women living in a house and they both have little babies. And one woman rolls over and kills her baby. And she quickly goes to the other woman, puts the dead baby by that mommy and takes the living baby. And when the mommy wakes up and says, wait, this isn't my baby who's dead, they go with the living baby to King Solomon. And each one says, it's my baby, it's my baby. And King Solomon says, bring me my sword and I'll cut the baby in half and give half to each of you. And one mother says, no, better you should give the baby to her and let the baby live. And King Solomon says, okay, that's the real mother because she has compassion on the baby. And then everyone became known of King Solomon as being a very famous judge, all from that idea of the real person. If this is the world of the dream, that real reality had to use it, what we call a dream, for his real reality to come out. So I will leave you with a joke. We'll end on this joke. This is a famous Jewish joke based on this story. In the early 1900s in Europe, it used to be that the yeshivas, during vacation, they would put young unmarried men, yeshiva boys, on trains, and they would go into the various Jewish villages or whatever, and they would meet families who were looking for young men to marry their daughters. So, train pulls up, and there are two potential mother-in-laws waiting at the train, and only one yeshiva boy gets off. And they both grab him. He's my son-in-law. No, he's my son-in-law. And they're pulling him. And they go to the Judge Solomon in their little village. And he hears each one claiming he's mine, he's mine. And the judge says, bring me a sword and I will cut him in half. And each of the mother-in-laws will get half. And one woman yells out, cut him in half. He says, ah, that's the mother-in-law. Anyhow, thank you all very, very much. It's always such a pleasure to see you both. And sure, I'm going to be watching next time, see what color the jacket will be then.
Looking forward to the next class.
Exactly. All right. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
too.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Be well. Bye.